The bus rumbled into the city just before midnight. The journey had been long and tiresome, and the passengers were weary. As the bus came to a halt, I peered out the window, trying to make sense of the dark, misty surroundings. The city seemed to be shrouded in an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional distant sound of a dog barking or a door creaking. Shadows stretched out from every corner, creating a maze of darkness that seemed to swallow the light. The buildings, tall and ancient, loomed over the streets like silent sentinels, their windows dark and empty. It felt as if the city itself was alive, watching, waiting. The streetlights flickered, casting an eerie yellow glow on the cobblestone streets. Each flicker seemed to pulse with a life of its own, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The light barely penetrated the thick fog that clung to the ground, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. A cold wind howled through the narrow alleyways, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decay. The sound was almost mournful, like the city was lamenting its own forgotten past. The wind seemed to whisper secrets, tales of long-lost souls and forgotten histories. The city felt ancient, burdened by unseen eyes. Every corner, every shadow seemed to hold a story, a memory of a time long gone. The architecture, though beautiful, was worn and crumbling, a testament to the passage of time and the weight of history. It sent shivers down my spine. The feeling of being watched was almost palpable, and I couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled over me. My breath came out in visible puffs, the cold air biting at my skin. I checked my backpack, feeling a nervous flutter in my stomach. The weight of my belongings was reassuring, but it did little to calm my nerves. I had packed light, only the essentials. But now I wondered if I was truly prepared for whatever lay ahead. This city wasn't on my itinerary. It was a place I had never heard of, not marked on any map I had seen. It was as if it had appeared out of nowhere, a hidden gem or perhaps a forgotten curse. The detour had brought me here, and now I had no choice but to explore. But a detour seemed unavoidable after the landslide blocked the highway. The road ahead had been impassable, forcing the bus to take an alternate route. It was a twist of fate that had led me to this mysterious city, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was meant to be. The travel agent had warned me about this place, her voice hushed, almost a whisper. She had spoken of strange occurrences, of people who had ventured into the city and never returned. At the time, I had dismissed her warnings as superstitious nonsense, but now, standing in the heart of the city, I wasn't so sure. But I dismissed her warnings as superstitious nonsense. I had always been a skeptic, someone who needed to see to believe. Ghost stories and urban legends had never held much sway over me, yet the atmosphere of the city was making me question everything I thought I knew. Now, I wasn't so sure. The city's eerie silence, the flickering lights, the cold wind, it all felt too real, too tangible to be mere superstition. Doubt crept into my mind, and I found myself reconsidering the travel agent's words. The only sign of life was a flickering neon sign in the distance. It stood out like a beacon in the darkness, its light struggling to stay alive. The sign was old and worn, its letters barely legible, but it was a sign of civilization, a hint of refuge in the otherwise desolate city. Hotel Grand Blackwood, it proclaimed in fading letters. The name sounded grand, but the reality was far from it. The building was old and decrepit, its facade crumbling and its windows dark. Yet, it was the only place that offered shelter, and I had no other choice. I trudged toward it, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Each step seemed to reverberate through the empty streets, amplifying the loneliness I felt. The city was a ghost town, and I was its only living inhabitant. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if I was walking against an invisible current. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, and every movement felt like a struggle. It was as if the city itself was trying to hold me back, to keep me from reaching the hotel. The air grew colder as I approached the hotel. A thick mist enveloped the building, adding to its already eerie appearance. I could feel the chill seeping into my bones, and I knew that whatever awaited me inside, it would be far from ordinary. The hotel lobby was shrouded in shadows. Dust motes danced in the faint beam of a single lamp on a dusty reception desk. A musty smell hung in the air, a blend of old wood and something faintly metallic. Behind the counter stood a man with a gaunt face and eyes that seemed to suck in the little light that remained. "Room for the night?" I asked, my voice raspy. The man simply nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. He handed me a heavy key, its brass surface cold and slick against my palm. "Number 13, he croaked, his voice a dry whisper. The number sent an involuntary shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off, exhaustion outweighing my growing unease. The man watched me as I turned towards the creaky staircase, his gaze feeling heavier with each step I took. The air in room number 13 was thick with the silence of the grave. It felt as though the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break the oppressive stillness. Moonlight filtered through a gap in the heavy velvet curtains, painting bars of silver across the threadbare carpet. The light seemed to dance with the shadows, creating an eerie ballet that played out on the floor. The furniture was draped in white sheets, giving the room the ghostly air of an abandoned mausoleum. Each piece stood like a silent sentinel, guarding secrets long forgotten. I tossed my backpack on the rickety luggage stand. The floorboards groaned in protest as if they were warning me of the room's dark history. A cold draft seeped in from under the door, sending a chill through me despite the warmth of my jacket. It was as if the room itself was breathing, exhaling a frigid breath that cut through the air. I tried to shake off the growing unease, telling myself it was just an old, neglected hotel, but the feeling of being watched was hard to ignore, as if unseen eyes were tracking my every move. As I settled on the edge of the bed, a low hum resonated from the walls. It was a sound that seemed to come from deep within the building, a vibration that spoke of hidden things. It was subtle at first, a barely audible tremor, but it grew steadily, morphing into a mournful groan that seemed to emanate from the very foundation of the building. The sound was almost alive, a lament that echoed through the room, filling it with an ancient sorrow that was impossible to escape. My reflection stared back at me from the ornate mirror above the fireplace. But something was different. My reflection looked paler, its eyes wide and filled with an unnameable fear that chilled me to the bone. I blinked, and the reflection snapped back to normal. I chalked it up to exhaustion, to the unsettling atmosphere of the hotel, but a seed of doubt had been planted, growing steadily in the fertile ground of my fear. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, echoing through the desolate hallways of the hotel. My heart pounded in my chest. I bolted to the door, throwing it open just in time to see a shadowy figure disappear at the end of the hallway. I spent the next day exploring the city, trying to shake off the unsettling events of the previous night, but the oppressive atmosphere clung to me like a shroud. The locals I encountered spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously towards the imposing Victorian mansion perched atop the hill overlooking the city. "The old Blackwood manor," a shopkeeper muttered, her voice barely a whisper. "Best stay away from there. It's cursed, they say." Curiosity gnawed at me, overcoming my better judgment. As dusk settled over the city, I found myself drawn towards the hill, my footsteps echoing my growing trepidation. The old manor loomed before me, its windows dark and empty, like the eyes of a predator lying in wait. The front door creaked open as if inviting me in. The sound echoed through the empty halls, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest before stepping inside. Dust motes danced in the single beam of sunlight that pierced the gloom of the foyer. They seemed almost alive, swirling and twirling in a silent ballet, a stark contrast to the stillness that enveloped the rest of the house. The air was heavy with the smell of decay, of memories long gone sour. Each breath I took was thick with the scent of mold and rot, a testament to the years of neglect that had ravaged this once lively home. I wandered from room to room, each one shrouded in shadows and draped in cobwebs. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. It felt as if the house itself was watching me, waiting. As I pushed open the door to a dusty nursery, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut behind me. The sudden noise startled me and I spun around, my eyes wide with fear. The room was filled with old toys, their once bright colors now faded and dull. Panic surged through me, tightening my chest. My breaths came in short, ragged gasps as I tried to calm myself. The walls seemed to close in around me, the darkness pressing in from all sides. I fumbled for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. My hands were slick with sweat and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. Desperation clawed at me as I pulled and twisted, but the door remained stubbornly shut. A child's rocking horse swayed gently in the corner, its vacant eyes seeming to follow my every move. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in the room. Exhausted, I sank to the floor, my back against the wall. My legs felt like jelly, and my mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. I closed my eyes, hoping for a moment of respite, but the darkness behind my eyelids was just as oppressive as the room around me. As I closed my eyes, I felt something brush against my hand. It was a light, almost imperceptible touch, but it sent a jolt of electricity through my body. My eyes snapped open and I looked down, my heart racing. I opened my eyes to see a pale, translucent hand resting on mine. It was cold to the touch, and I could see the faint outline of bones beneath the ghostly skin. I stared in horror, unable to move as the hand tightened its grip ever so slightly. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Terror had rooted me to the spot, frozen my vocal cords. The hand was ice cold, its touch sending a wave of nausea through me. It slowly faded from view, leaving behind a tingling sensation and the chilling certainty that I was not alone. Looking up, I noticed them. Shadowy figures flickered in the corners of the room, their forms shifting and swirling in the dim light. Children with hollow eyes and mournful smiles, their laughter echoing through the silence like the tinkling of broken glass. They were everywhere, surrounding me, their eyes burning into me with an unnerving intensity. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drum. They were the source of the cold, the whispers, the oppressive despair that permeated the very air I breathed. I ran blindly, desperately through the decaying mansion, the spectral laughter of the children echoing behind me. Each room I stumbled into led to another, the house seeming to stretch and twist around me, a labyrinth with no escape. The shadows clung to me, the children's laughter growing louder, closer. Finally, I burst through the front door and into the cool night air. I didn't stop running until I reached the relative safety of my hotel room. I slammed the door shut behind me, the flimsy lock offering little comfort against the terror that clawed at my sanity. I haven't left the room since. The whispers follow me, echoing in the plumbing, rustling in the curtains. The children are always there, just beyond the veil of my reality, peering at me with their hollow eyes. I know now what happened in that house, the terrible tragedy that stained its walls and trapped those innocent souls. And I know now that I can never truly escape. They are bound to me, their sorrow a chilling echo that will follow me to my grave.